and welcome to another episode of the Autocar Professional Dialogue. Our guest today is former bureaucrat and industry veteran R C Bhargava, who is the chairman of India's leading passenger vehicle maker, Maruti Suzuki India Limited. Mr. Bhargava, thank you for talking to us on this show.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here.
Great, sir. Let's start off by talking about the union budget, which was announced only a few days ago.
Yeah.
Would you say the big ticket, the most important announcement as far as the automotive industry is concerned, is the scrappage policy, followed by the focus or a lot of allocation on infrastructure development?
No, I won't agree with that at all. I think the most important announcement was the finance minister saying that the government intends that manufacturing should grow in double digits. Now, it's the first time that I remember ever hearing a government formally announcing, and on such an important occasion as the budget, that they intend to grow manufacturing in double digits. Now, why is this important for the automobile industry? Because automobile industry is somewhere around 40 to 45% of total manufacturing. You cannot grow the automobile industry at lower rates and then expect manufacturing to grow in double digits.
Right.
It's too big a segment of the manufacturing sector. So if the manufacturing sector is to grow in double digits, it's virtually certain that the automobile industry should grow in double digits. And as you know, Sumantra, the automobile industry in the last decade particularly has been declining. And in the last 5 years, it was down to a CAGR of 1.5%. So from that to reach double digits will require government to take several policy initiatives to ensure that the growth rate on a sustained basis gets to double digits.
Right.
And that, to my mind, is far, far more important than the scrappage policy. Yes, the scrappage policy is good for various reasons, and not only the growth of the industry, because the scrappage policy requires vehicle fitness. Unfortunately, we have not had a proper vehicle fitness certificate in this country at all. And as Siam said, actually vehicle fitness should be certified at periodical intervals. And there should be proper standards and norms for periodical fitness, because that will ensure safety of users both in the vehicle and outside the vehicle. It'll ensure better traffic management, and it'll ensure that the environment is better protected. It will, of course, lead to the scrapping of unfit vehicles, which will lead to growth, because today there are too many unfit vehicles on the road. But that's a byproduct. I think safety and environment and traffic management for the citizens is far more important.
Yes, correct, absolutely. And talking about the scrappage policy and the broad kind of timelines about for 20 years for passenger vehicles and 15 years for commercial vehicles, I believe for Maruti, that would translate to about at least a car park of about 3.9 million vehicles, right? Which were sold 20 years or before.
Sure, there are lots of old vehicles on the road.
Right. And you also talked about the importance of the focus on manufacturing. And as the finance minister herself said, that sustained growth of the manufacturing sector is key for really making the Make in India initiative the vision a true success. And at another level, it is also crucial for the realization of the 5 million trillion. 5 trillion
Absolutely.
Right?
I don't think we can get to any of these targets without growing the automobile industry. You know, the biggest creator of employment, and I'm not talking of just the factories, I'm talking of in the economy as a whole, is actually the automobile sector.
Right, right. And also talking about the automotive industry, sir, uh, uh, another announcement which has a bearing on the industry is the hike in customs duty of and various components. Now, there are two schools of thought. One says, okay, it is a protectionism, in another form, it's a kind of protectionism, and on another school of thought says that it's a good for Indian companies to leverage this opportunity, and also kind of in line with the Atmanirbharta theme, really strengthen the industry's capabilities.
Sure. Well, Mantra, the situation is that when any new industry starts now, with the global market being virtually open to everybody, the industry has a disadvantage because it's still on a small scale and initial costs of operation are high. So some protection for a startup industry is probably a good thing for creating industrial viability in the country. Now, obviously, that should be for a very limited period till such time as the industry is able to establish and get to some size, which let's say takes 3 years or something like that. So protection for 3 years, 4 years would be perfectly acceptable. But the question is that it should not happen to an industry which doesn't exist at all. If there are some things which are not being manufactured in India and no factories coming up for it, then raising customs duty on that is not going to bring Atmanirbharta. It's just a revenue raising thing. So I think this customs duty has to be viewed carefully. And I would support the imposition of customs duty for short periods to ensure that domestic industry is able to survive its initial, what should I say, when it's a new baby. The new baby requires special attention. So a new baby in industry, when you get into new products, requires to be handled like a newborn baby and given that kind of attention. But once it becomes a little bigger, then it must stand on its own feet.
Indeed, right, right, said sir. And on another level now, shifting gears a little bit, talking about Maruti's performance and its place in the industry. It has got over the years. I mean, it built a lead which is almost unassailable at one level, perhaps. And But with the market evolving, with the customer also maturing, uh, how does Maruti plan to sustain its, not only protect its turf, which is a very enviable 50% or so, but also grow and sustain this leadership? Because no, as I said, the market along and the customer in it both are evolving, and as someone said, you know, timing the BR to reach the top of Mount Everest is challenging, but remaining there is even more so.
Well, Maruti has throughout focused on trying to best meet customer requirements and to see that the customer gets the best after sales service, best spare parts, so that customer is feeling that when he buys a Maruti car, he is getting value for his money and his product is going to be something which he can use without much problems for a long time. And I think we have to continue to do that. And we are aware of how the markets are changing, how customer requirements are changing, and we are adjusting to meet those requirements. We will, of course, need to do a lot of other things now in terms of expanding capacities and bringing in new technologies and things. But the basic approach is going to be the same. Look after customer requirements as well as you possibly can.
Correct. And with that philosophy in mind, how do you plan to tap the growing aspiration of customers? And as the economy in the mid to long term is expected to be even grow at a robust pace, they not only the aspiration, the affordability will also increase. And in the market, in the segment of rupees 10 lakh and above, Maruti is still the performance of Maruti or the presence of Maruti is quite different than the segment below 10 lakh. So how does Maruti plan to grow in that segment?
See, the market for the bigger vehicles will certainly grow, but that doesn't mean that the market for smaller vehicles will not grow. You know, today India is only around 30 cars per 1,000 people. And there's a lot of scope for that growth to happen. Because the number 30, I expect will, at the first stage at least, go up to about 100 vehicles per 1,000. And the bulk of those will remain people at the lower end of the market. Certainly that segment will grow, but we are in that segment today, and we have a few vehicles which are in that segment. We are also, as you know, bringing out now in the SUV segment, there is a growing market and a growing demand for SUVs. So we will be in the SUV market also. And customers today want connected cars, and they want all kinds of electronics in the cars and all of those. So we are giving that to them also.
Right.
So I don't think that is going to be a problem at all.
And do you think Maruti was a little movement in the as you touched upon the SUV market? Do you think Maruti could have done better in that segment? And even if late, how does Maruti plan to kind of really strengthen its presence there maybe in the coming financial year?
See, if we had got into SUVs also earlier, what would our market share have been? And that's also something which has to be kept in mind, because if one company keeps growing its market share, that's also not very good. And, there are other players in the market. So you have to keep that aspect in mind, that there is a competition law and there's a requirement for competition. I don't think Maruti would want that there's no competition in the market.
Yeah. And talking about competition, talking about SUV, very soon there will be another global OEM which will make its entry into the PV market with an SUV. So again, in the scenario of growing competition, what are the key pillars that Maruti will rely on to really kind of sustain its performance?
It's the same formula which we talked about, that how do you meet the customer needs to the best possible extent. I think our biggest strength is that we have today about 4,000 service points in the country and growing. They're growing every month. No one is anywhere close to that, and not likely to get close to this number of 4,000 service points in the near future. What does a customer want? He should want to get good quality after-sales service as conveniently and as economically as possible. If you have a service point which is within 2 kilometers of where you are, and if somebody else has a service point which is 30 kilometers away, which is more convenient, which is more economical?
Correct.
I think that's one of the biggest advantages which Maruti customers have. our growing service network, our growing network of spare parts distribution, our emphasis on these areas of spare parts and service, because we believe that, of course, vehicles should be produced and good quality vehicles should be produced. But we believe that it's at least as important, if not more important,
Right.
to provide good quality, economical after-sales service.
I think those are fundamental, robust kind of steps or things that need to be in place for a sustainable growth.
I mean, focused on that from the beginning.
Indeed, indeed, and the results are there to see. But talking about competition, talking about disruptive times, talking about the changing customer taste preferences. Sir, do you think if 50% market share in today's times and in the coming, coming times, is it a realistic target or sustainable target in a growing market, which is set to see some market growth in the coming years?
There are lots of people who believe that when the market becomes bigger, maintaining a 50% market share is not a thing which can happen. It's not happened anywhere in the world, by the way.
Yes.
That any company has that kind of a market share. Even General Motors at the height of its dominance didn't have that kind of market share.
When it was the world's largest player.
Yeah, it's the world's largest player. And the Indian market today is quite small. But then it's going to become a 10 million a year market, and it's going to become a 15 million a year market possibly. At that stage, a 50% market share means 5 to 7.5 million cars a year. That's a lot of cars for a company to produce and sell in one country. So let's see. I mean, it's a mind-boggling figure.
Yes.
But who knows? I don't know what the future will be. So I'm not going to make a guess even as to whether we will be at 50% or something lower, or what lower number, I don't know. It's something which will keep evolving.
Maybe then the focus will be more, even stronger on profitability and sustainable profits, maybe.
No, it's not that. It's the whole logistics and the whole complications of running a company which is making that number of cars.
Right.
Nobody does it.
Indeed. Yes.
Nobody that I know of is making one single company making 5, 6, 7 million cars.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, what will it mean in terms of management? What will it mean in terms of organization? It's very, very difficult to predict at this point of time. It's one thing to make and sell 2 million cars in a company, which is big enough, by the way. But if you make that 2 million into 5 million, what will it entail? I don't think anybody has applied their minds to this problem.
Right.
It's just numbers we are talking about. But if you're going to run a company, then you can't just talk of numbers. You have to look at all the implications of what it will mean to produce and sell that number of cars month after month.
Right. I mean, even if any player is doing it currently in their automotive industry, it's not alone. It's in alliance, in partnership,
it's
in
collaboration. Alliance, it's under with different companies.
Yes, yes. And talking about alliance, sir, Suzuki and Toyota has this global alliance, part of which we are seeing in action in India as well. Going forward, how do you expect this partnership, this alliance to evolve? I mean, you have already shared some Maruti Suzuki models with Toyota, and which Toyota Kirloskar Motor is gaining from. But going forward, are you likely to kind of share capacity, use the capacity, maybe idle capacity of Toyota or any other? How do you think the alliance in India will evolve?
You know, the alliance is an alliance in Japan. And we in India, Maruti Suzuki India is not involved in that alliance directly at all.
Yes.
But that alliance in Japan is, of course, having its impact in India also, as you said just now, in terms of technology, in terms of vehicle sharing, in terms of capacity sharing. That's all part of the alliance in Japan. I think that will continue to grow. And it's something which is good for all of us. I think this kind of alliance between Suzuki and Toyota in Japan, with the enormous capabilities which Toyota has, plus the very specialized skills which Suzuki has, I think that combination is going to do a lot of good to the Indian market.
Right. As the technology evolution also happens in the automotive marketplace, so would more and more technology be sourced from Toyota?
Well, technology comes to us through Suzuki. And it's Suzuki which will keep working with Toyota on new technologies and things like that. But certainly, if some new technologies are evolved in Japan between the two of them, and they have applications in India, it'll certainly come here because the market here is big.
Yes.
And both Toyota and Suzuki will benefit if any new technology becomes available and is used on a large volume of vehicles, because that reduces the cost of developing technology, reduces the risk of developing technology because it's spread and quickly realized over a large volume of cars.
And sir, and talking about Maruti Suzuki now, and as it now grows in the market, and you have the Gujarat facility churning out cars. At one point, once you reach the peak capacity, would you look at tapping the Toyota facility in Karnataka, because there you may get good capacity, which
it's already happening. I think the spare capacity of Toyota will be used to supply vehicles to Maruti. It's like same contract manufacturing as we are doing for Toyota today.
I see. Okay.
You know, we are making this Desire and
yeah,
for Toyota, the Baleno,
yes,
and the Vitara.
Yes.
So we will also use Toyota's capacities to make vehicles for us.
Right.
It makes, again, it's a win-win for both of us.
Indeed a win-win proposition there.
Yeah.
And sir, your thoughts on the electrification trend? I mean, when you had, your original plan was to have a foray for Maruti Suzuki into the electric EV space in 2020. You had embarked on a nationwide research project, a lot of R&Ds and trials. Where does those plans stand? Obviously, it didn't happen in 2020.
You know, unfortunately, so far, the expected developments in global battery technology have not apparently moved as fast as was expected. There was expectations that the cost of battery technology would come down, batteries actually would come down sharply in the next 2-3 years. And that $200 kilowatt would come down to maybe $60, $70, $80 a kilowatt. It's not happening that slowly. And I think that one of the biggest impediments to the growth of electric vehicles in India is this high cost of technology. Along with this is the fact that, again, technology has not developed to find materials other than lithium as the main ingredient for batteries. And the lithium is not easily available. The bulk of it in the world is controlled by one country. And that also becomes an issue, that do you want to substitute your existing imports of oil with the import of a material which is essentially controlled by one country?
Right.
There are other questions of infrastructure and what you should do. And energy, what is your availability of energy from where? If it is clean energy, then you need storage. Then how do you store the energy? Again, it becomes a question of battery technology. So it's not so simple a matter. Everybody talks of EVs, but you look globally into EVs. This growth of EVs is very, very slow. And in most countries, it's just 2-3%. I mean, that's all it is. China has the biggest, I think, EV population.
Right.
And they control the lithium supply also.
Yes.
But all other countries, the progress of EVs is very slow. And remember, India's per capita incomes are way below those of America and Europe and Japan and everywhere. So the high cost has a different implication for Indians than it has for people who have a per capita income of $50,000, $60,000, $70,000.
Indeed.
A $2,000, $3,000 income guy and a $50,000, $60,000 income guy buying the vehicle at the same cost,
Yes.
a different proposition.
Indeed, a different proposition. So maybe you expect that to happen in a couple of years or so from now? I mean, that 2020.
I don't know. Let's see how technology develops.
I see.
It's really not in our hands. And the customer is waiting for the same thing, but the customer can't afford what we are trying to give him today. It doesn't mean, I've asked so many people who talk of EVs, the simple question that, would you buy an EV? And invariably the answer is no. And I'm talking of people like you, journalists and other people like this who have questions on this. How many of you would buy an EV?
Yes.
At this cost and with the problems that you have today of infrastructure and charging, range and all of that, how many of you would buy it?
Sir, and before we end, sir, we are about a couple of months away from the next financial year. So in that fiscal, how do you expect, would that be a year for Maruti to take some new steps to really, appeal more to the Indian consumer in terms of new products, maybe new technologies as well?
We don't talk about new products in advance anyway. But I think next year is still going to be a year when we will be catching up with the sales which have been lost in the last 2-3 years. This year, the sales of the automobile industry as a whole will be almost 25% lower than what they were in 18-19.
So, which is the real benchmark you have to compare with, not
18-19 was, this 19-20, we lost 18% in the automobile industry. This year, we'll probably lose something close to 7-8%. So we'll be almost 25% below what we were in 18-19. So 21-22, the industry would do well to get close to 18-19. So it's not that there's going to be some great revival of the industry at all.
Indeed, sir. Now that, post-COVID, during the festive season, as the revival happens, wishing you and all in the industry a good year ahead. And sir, it was a lovely conversation with you, and best wishes to you too. And thank you for sparing your time and talking to Autocar professionals.
Thank you, Sumant. This was enjoyable. Thank you, and all the best.
Thank you very much.